There are moments you can't explain, moments that arrive like whispers, too precise to be accidents. A name you hadn't thought of in years suddenly shows up everywhere. A dream so vivid it haunts you, then days later it unfolds in real life. A book falls off the shelf. A stranger says the exact words you needed to hear. You look at the clock. Again. And it's the same numbers. Again. You pause. You notice. And for a second, something inside you stirs. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. But then, your mind steps in. It's nothing, it tells you. Coincidence. Don't read into it. And so you move on, again. But the feeling lingers, doesn't it? The sense that something is reaching for you, like the world around you is not entirely silent, but quietly alive. What if those strange alignments, those so-called coincidences, were never random at all? What if there's a hidden language you were born understanding, but slowly taught to forget? A language not made of words, but of symbols, of timing, of patterns too elegant to be dismissed. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence of inner and outer events with no apparent cause, yet impossibly aligned. But this isn't just a psychological theory. This is a mirror held up to your life, to the events that shaped you, to the questions you never stopped asking. Why did that happen? Why now? Why them? Why does this keep repeating? And underneath those questions, a deeper ache. Is there meaning in all of this? Or am I just floating in chaos? You've been taught to believe in logic, in cause and effect, in a world that moves like a machine. But deep in your bones, you've always known the truth. This life is not mechanical. It's mystical. They trained you not to see it, not in some grand conspiracy, but in 1,000 quiet ways. Subtle cues, social rules, curriculums, screen time, polite conversations that never stray too far from the surface. As a child, you were wide open. You noticed patterns. You spoke your dreams aloud. You felt things deeply. The strange familiarity of certain places, the way someone's energy shifted a room. You knew things before they happened. You picked up on moods before a word was said. You saw meaning in moments, and you weren't afraid to follow it. But the world around you was uncomfortable with that kind of knowing. They taught you to stop asking, to dismiss your instincts as fantasy, to trust numbers over intuition, logic over mystery, measurable outcomes over invisible forces. And the more awake you become, the more the universe begins to speak to you. Not with words, but with echoes. This is not just a video. This is a reintroduction to the forgotten language of reality, a language that's been calling to you all along. So if you've ever had a moment that made you question everything, stay with me, because synchronicity is not a trick. It's not superstition, and it's not luck. It's a doorway. And once you walk through it, you'll never see your life the same way again. And so you did what most of us do. You adapted. You stopped listening. You stopped looking up. You let go of wonder and learned how to perform. Our culture worships control, the straight line, the forecast, the checklist. We want everything to be predictable, replicable, understood. But what happens when your soul doesn't follow a formula? What happens when reality begins to glitch? When the exact song plays the moment you think of them? When the door opens before you even knock? When that dream becomes real and you can't explain why? You've been told that noticing is irrational, that intuition is untrustworthy, that coincidences are just mental noise. But the truth is, you were conditioned into deafness. We've created a world where speed replaces stillness, where logic drowns out wisdom, where coincidence is a convenient label for everything we can't fit into a spreadsheet. And so we go numb. We call it maturity, rationality, realism. But what it really is forgetting. Forgetting how to feel when something aligns. Forgetting how to follow what can't be explained. Forgetting that the universe, life itself, might be trying to speak directly to you. Most people never reclaim that inner knowing. They stay asleep in their routines, ignoring the signs, mistaking noise for truth, mistaking busyness for meaning. But if you're still here, if you've felt that twinge too, if some part of you knows that there is something bigger happening behind the scenes, then it's time to unlearn the silence, because the signals never stopped. You just stopped believing they were real. Here's the truth they never taught you. Reality is not random. It's not a cold, mechanical accident. It's a conversation. Every thought you've had, every feeling you've buried, every unanswered question inside you, they don't disappear. They echo. They vibrate. And those vibrations shape your experience of the world. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, the mysterious alignment between your inner world and outer events, a meaningful coincidence that defies logic, but rings with undeniable truth. These aren't anomalies. They're cracks in the illusion, moments where the veil between psyche and matter grows thin, and something sacred slips through. You see, the unconscious is not just a repository of old wounds and repressed memories. It's an ancient compass, a silent oracle. It tracks connections we can't consciously see, and when the moment is right, it speaks through signs. Synchronicities occur when the outer world begins to mirror your inner state, not just in metaphor, but in real, undeniable events. A phone call at the exact moment you thought of someone. A book falling open to the page that names your current struggle. The same message, the same number, the same song, over and over again. Are these just patterns in your head? Is your brain playing tricks? No, it's tuning in. Because here's what modern science is finally beginning to echo. Your perception doesn't just receive reality, it participates in creating it. From neuroscience's reticular activating system, which filters the billions of signals you receive based on what you're emotionally focused on, to quantum physics observer effect, where particles behave differently when watched. Everything suggests you're not a passive spectator, you're a co-creator. When you begin to wake up, to become conscious of what you carry inside, the world starts responding. Not always with what you want, but always with what you need. Jung believed that synchronicities weren't random. They were rooted in archetypes, ancient structures of meaning that live deep within the human psyche. And when those archetypes are activated, by crisis, by grief, by longing, by awakening, the world begins to reflect them, not metaphorically, literally. You think of transformation, and dragonflies appear. You're grieving, and see symbols of rebirth. You ask a question, and the answer finds you, uninvited but unmistakable. These moments, they are thresholds. They are the universe knocking, whispering, "Wake up, pay attention. There's more to this life than what you've been told." But here's the catch. If you dismiss them as coincidence, if you laugh them off to stay safe in logic, the conversation fades. Because synchronicity doesn't scream, it hums, it whispers, and it waits for those brave enough to listen. Something strange begins to happen, and the moment you stop brushing off the signs, the world, this dull, mechanical world you were taught to survive in, starts to breathe with you. You think of someone, and they call. You dream of a symbol, and it shows up in a stranger's tattoo. You walk away from something toxic, and a door opens that wasn't there before. Coincidence? No. This is the shift. Not magic, not superstition, attunement. Because the moment you stop living on autopilot, the noise quiets, and the signal grows louder. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." But the opposite is also true. Once you see, you can choose. Synchronicity becomes your compass, not because it tells you what to do, but because it reveals what matters now. You begin to notice what resonates, what repeats, what vibrates with that subtle hum of, "This means something." And when you follow it, without overthinking, without second-guessing, life responds. You stop chasing things. They begin to arrive. The job you were forcing, replaced by a conversation that opens a new door. The relationship that drained you, replaced by a mirror. Someone who sees you because you finally see yourself. The search for signs becomes unnecessary because you become the sign. This isn't just spiritual fluff. It's psychology. It's pattern recognition. It's your unconscious mind, no longer buried, but guiding you like a north star. It's flow, and flow doesn't mean easy. It means aligned. Synchronicities often don't show up to comfort you. They show up to disrupt you, to say, "You've outgrown this," to say, "It's time to let go," to say, "The next chapter is waiting." But it won't start until you leave the old one behind. And here's the wild part. When you honor these signs, no matter how small, they multiply. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You've tuned yourself into the frequency of the present moment, and the present moment, that razor-thin line between what was and what's possible, is where everything happens. It's where power lives. It's where miracles take form. And most people never live there. They live in their heads, in their past, in their plans. But you are learning to live in response to what is, not just what should be. And that changes everything. Now that you see the pattern, what will you do with it? This is where most people turn back. They get just close enough to glimpse the truth and then retreat into the safety of doubt. Because doubt is comfortable, predictable, it requires nothing of you. But synchronicity asks for everything. Not your effort, not your control, but your attention, your trust, and above all, your participation. Because you are not just the witness of these signs, you are their mirror, their maker, that uncanny sense that life is trying to tell you something. It is, but it will never shout, it will never chase. It waits. It waits for you to stop explaining everything away, to stop running loops in your head and start listening with your soul. It waits for you to notice that every encounter, every detour, every strange, inexplicable moment is a crack in the illusion of randomness, a rupture in the ordinary, a door. And once you walk through that door, once you stop living like life is happening to you, everything begins to bend. Not because reality is changing, but because you are finally in rhythm with the current beneath it. This is the essence of Jung's message, that psyche and matter are not separate, that your inner world is not a private prison, it's a projector, and that the world around you is listening. The stranger on the train, the scarab on the window, the thunder the moment someone dies. Not accidents, not fantasies, messages. And now you're awake enough to read them. But this is not the end. Synchronicity is not the destination. It is the invitation to step into deeper authorship of your own life, to stop begging for signs, and start becoming the kind of person who doesn't need them, the one who walks aligned, who knows when it's right, who trusts without needing to see the whole staircase, because once you cross that threshold, the world becomes a conversation, a dialogue between your innermost truth and the sacred intelligence that shaped this universe. And once you accept that invitation, there's no going back. You're no longer a passenger in your life. You're a participant in something far greater than you were ever taught to believe. So next time something feels like more than a coincidence, pause. Don't dismiss it. Breathe. Listen. And ask yourself, what if this is not random? What if this is exactly the moment I was meant to notice? And what if this is the moment everything starts to change, because maybe it already has? What if I told you that your attention is the architect of your reality? That the way you see shapes the way you live, not metaphorically, but quite literally. Because here's the truth most people never realize. Synchronicity doesn't happen in chaos. It happens in precision. And that precision begins with presence. When you slow down, when you actually notice the patterns, you begin to see what's been there all along. A silent intelligence arranging reality around you, not to control you, but to awaken you. This is why synchronicities often appear at emotional thresholds, when you're at the edge of something, feeling stuck, grieving, about to change. The unconscious sends signals. The outer world mirrors them, and suddenly the mundane becomes mystical. A phone call at the perfect moment. A line in a book that feels like it was written for you. A symbol reappearing like a breadcrumb in the dark. This is not fantasy. This is the language of awareness. Carl Jung didn't believe these moments were random. He believed they were meaningful convergences between psyche and matter, between your inner world and the outer world. So the real question becomes, are you paying attention? Because most people aren't. They're too caught in their thoughts, their routines, their fears. They don't see the symbol in the struggle. They miss the message in the mistake. They think reality is silent, when really, they've just stopped listening. But the moment you start, even just a little, the signal gets louder. It's like tuning an old radio dial. Static, fuzz, then suddenly, clarity. A frequency you didn't know was waiting for you. Jung called it the psychoid realm, a place where inner symbols and external events bleed into one another, where dreams don't just stay in your sleep, they begin showing up in your day. This is the architecture of awareness, and once you enter it, your life no longer feels accidental. You realize it's not about controlling reality. It's about entering into conversation with it. You'll notice, once you start seeing the world this way, you can't go back. You'll try to explain it to people. They'll nod politely, maybe even agree. But inside, you'll feel the distance, because this isn't just something you believe, it's something you live. You'll find yourself listening more, not to words, but to patterns, to timing, to energy, to the strange, quiet pull that says, go this way. You won't need proof, you'll just know. This is the moment your old self begins to fade. The version of you that waited for signs, for permission, for certainty. That version had to dissolve, so that the one who sees, the self, could emerge. Because the real initiation isn't dramatic. It doesn't happen in temples or ceremonies. It happens in a Tuesday afternoon conversations that cracks you open, in the wrong turn that leads to the right place, in the dream you can't stop thinking about, until it shows up in real life. That's how it starts. A nudge, a whisper, a pattern you were never meant to miss. And when you follow it, not because you're sure, But because you trust, you become something rare in this world. You become awake. So, now you know. The signs were never random. The patterns were never meaningless. And that feeling in your chest, that quiet pull when the world aligns for no reason at all, that was always a message, a memory from something older than your mind, but closer than your breath. Don't rush to explain it. Don't shrink it down to logic. Just notice. Notice what happens when you begin to live as if every moment means something, as if the universe is not watching you, but with you. And when the next synchronicity appears, don't look away. Look through it. That's where your real life begins.